The next speaker of ours is Mr. Amjad Hossein Panahi, a human rights activist and a Kurdish activist active on ethnic groups in Iran. He will speak on arbitrary detention of Kurds in Iran. Please, I ask him to start speaking. I want to say hello to all of you dear people who are present here and thank those who organized this. This arbitrary detention is not new, and it's not about only political prisoners. From the very first years of the Islamic Revolution, there were arbitrary detention, arbitrary executions were very prevalent, so much so that there were 6 prisons for 6 different authorities in Iran, and each of them had their own things without even observing, cosmetically some judicial rules. The problem of arbitrary detention in Iran has not been only for political opposition. Many ordinary citizens also have the same problem. The government, while fighting corruption, with the excuse of fighting corruption, gets people not only on the street but in private parties without even the usual due course that it itself observes. In the prison, it used to be previously it used to be done by revolutionary committees. Now it's done by police, by the forces of the intelligence ministry, and sometimes by the Basij forces. The detentions, what is worse than the detentions themselves, is the way accused are treated. A inhumane treatment is what they experience, that with no legal or even human rights standards are justifiable. One could say indeed that torture starts from arbitrary detention. When a force can let himself to arrest someone without any legal standards, of course they have no responsibility for the prisoner after they arrested them, and they will do what they want to them. It is this that Zahra Kazemi, Akbar Mohammadi died in prison. Ibrahim Lotfallahi, a Kurdish student in Sanandaj prison, was also died young. This is why this happened. But arbitrary detention generally, or any arbitrary actions from the police and government force, what does it mean? Actually, what the base of their arbitrariness is their irresponsibility of the government forces showing any to legality, to any rule of law, without looking at any legal foundations, which these law, even the actual law, are not based on human rights. But even without paying attention to them, these people are arbitrarily detained. The Iranian government is one of the signatories of the International Covenant of Civic and Political Rights, and on that basis is obligated to do. Article 9 of that covenant means everybody has a right to be innocent, and you can't arrest anybody arbitrarily except if with judicial due course. And the Article 32 of the Iranian Constitution is said that no one can be detained except with the warrant given by the law, and which is based on the covenant, and it speaks against arbitrary detention. The Iranian Constitution does, but whether it is the recent detention of the civic and political activists, or whether it is the detention of women and young people based on national security, are clearly arbitrary detentions that Covenant says, and that the Constitution says. Article 2 of them said, International Covenant says that anybody arrested should be charged with something, with his crimes, while being arrested. But in these cases, also based on Article 32 of the Iranian Constitution, when someone is arrested, their charges should be immediately given to the accused in writing, and in 24 hours an initial case should be immediately prepared, and trial should be prepared. in many cases, there have been some accused who, even after months of their imprisonment, are not charged with something. They don't even know what is the nature of their charges. There has been many cases where people have been arrested with political and security charges, but interrogators have asked them about, the arrest has actually been because of their relation to other people. They ask questions unrelated to the charges in order to psychologically break the people and also just get information from them. This is common in Iran. It has also been seen many times that for months and years someone has been in prison without a court trial being held, and despite this, not even in one case we have seen that the Islamic Republic courts, as the Article 32 of the Constitution provides, would have do trials, fair trials for these people. Forget trials. These authorities sometimes actually have gotten promoted because of their activities and have gotten better jobs. But similar cases of the human rights violation in Kurdistan is more than Iran. In the first years after the revolution, they said they are fighting separationism, and that's how they militarized Kurdistan. Any dissidents, any political activism was heavily suppressed. There was widespread arrest of political prisoners and their tortures in military barracks and in detention houses. Hundreds of youth were charged with working with oppositional Kurdish forces and executed. There was a intimidation all over Kurdistan, and even today, even though some say, oh no, we don't look at Kurdistan from a security standpoint anymore, but the realities show something else. Revolutionary Guards have started having new bases in the area. Basiji forces are actually getting more authorities. This all shows that the government has security priorities more than economic, social, or cultural priorities. After Rouhani government has come to power, we have actually seen an increased violation of the minorities. Actually, in the months near to the elections, and even a little bit after elections, for a short time, the arrests were at a minimum and the conditions were a bit better. But immediately after, the arrests start going up again. And at this moment, the government of Mr. Rouhani, instead of gaining the lost trust in the Kurdish populated, has actually prioritized intimidating them and trying to suppress all the legitimate demands of the Kurds and breaking their human rights, and actually has increased the injustice in these areas. It is under such conditions in Kurdistan that the latest statistics show that more than 40% of political prisoners in Iran are actually Kurds. The government's measures in arresting a lot of political prisoners by saying you're active in Kurdish parties, saying you're acting against national security, or that you're disrupting, this continues. Giving execution orders to dozens of political and civic activists shows an increase in intimidation. And only in the last few years, more than 15 political activists have been killed, have been executed. Kurdish agency shows that the number of Kurdish detained citizens from 2004 to summer 2004 has been 146 Kurdish citizens have been arrested. Out of this, 16 were cultural activists, 5 of them were students, 2 were teachers, 3 were photographers, 1 was a blogger, and 2 were journalists. 22 other people were religious activists, i.e. they were Sunni activists, 2 were Kolbar, 4 were workers, 3 were civic activists. And of the collection of 140, 111 were arrested by intelligence ministry, 14 were arrested by the police forces, 3 were arrested by the municipality and the local police, and 2 were arrested by the Revolutionary Guards, and 2 were arrested by the identification police, and 2 were actually called to the court later. So in the first 6 months of the current Persian calendar year, in the first month in March we had 22 arrests, and then 22 in the next month, and in the next month also the same. In the first month of the summer we had 41, and then 21 in the next month, and the 6 arrests in the following month. Based on the documents that families of prisoners themselves have given to us and shows the dates of the arrest or date of the entry to prison, based on that, based on the documents of the date entry, based on these documents coming from the prison themselves and the social security organization of the prisons themselves, show that the person who has been arrested, the date of being transferred to prison, has been previously spent 9 months in detention center held by the intelligence ministry without clarifying of any charges, and in these periods of course he was tortured and harassed. At the same time, because of the security situation that exists in Iran, and especially in Kurdish populated areas, security authorities and all authorities outside the constitution and outside law have repeatedly acted. The experience of the last 35 years shows they do arbitrary detention, that they arbitrarily kept people months, sometimes even years, without giving charges. In Rajai Shah prison, in Urumiyeh prison, in Sanandaj prison, there has been people there for 5 years without knowing why they are there. 7 prisons in Rajai Shah prison are from Mahabad. They have been there 5 years without knowing their charges. Same in the Urumiyeh prison. There has been an activist who is not clear why he has been arrested, and he has been in Urumiyeh prison without knowing his destiny for 4 years. He's yet to receive a trial. There are sometimes that extrajudicial and even outside constitution arrests happen, and people have been under detention for a very long time and going through torture and are already in prison. At the end, I want to say that what is most sad is this constant human rights activist situation in Iran and other countries that violate human rights. There is no legal reference. There is no law even that could pay reparations to these victims and could kind of redress their grievances. For months, weeks, and years, they go under solitary confinement. They go under torture. In many points, even courts declare them innocent, but nobody is responsible for the sufferings that they've gone. What we need is a support movement, nationally and internationally, to defend the human rights, so that the victims of the human rights violations can come under support. There is no hope until then that we can have for Iranian government and governments like Iran to observe human rights. Thank you very much, Mr. Amjad Hossein Panahi.